You're listening to the Onside Podcast, the podcast for inclusive, innovation-driven entrepreneurship here in Atlantic Canada. I'm your host, Alex McCann, and this is Season 2, Episode 10, and the theme this month is Women in Innovation and Entrepreneurship, a Balancing Act. Today, I'm joined by Bronwyn Bridges, a PhD student in pharmacy at Memorial University in Newfoundland, who is the co-founder and CEO of PragmaClin, a company focused on assessing and monitoring neurological conditions such as Parkinson's disease. Alongside her co-founder and COO, Gord Genge, an entrepreneur who has Parkinson's, the pair are making a difference in the lives of patients with movement disorders. Their PRIM software runs tests on patients using cameras to remotely monitor motor and non-motor skills. PragmaClin is a recent Volta Cohort winner and has also won the top prize of $25,000 at the Mel Woodward Cup, a competition for startups connected to Memorial University. Bronwyn, welcome to the Onside Podcast. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, awesome. Well, I just shared with everybody some awesome things about you and your background and what you've been doing in terms of accomplishments with starting your company, PragmaClin. And but before we kind of dive in, I always like to let our listeners hear directly from our wonderful guests a little bit about themselves. So I was wondering if you can share a little bit of your background with the Onside Podcast listeners.
Happily. So my name is Bronwyn Bridges. I grew up in Summerside, PEI, a typical lifestyle. I volunteered a lot through the hospital, through local care homes, and then ended up having a passion for science. So did a lot of science courses in high school, which led me to a biology degree at St. FX in Nova Scotia. And then while there, I ended up actually having some major concussions that resulted in my passion for neuroscience and my, we'll say, not passion for being able to get into post-secondary programs post-grad. So I ended up applying and getting into the Master's of Pharmacy program at MUN in Newfoundland. And since then, I've been at Memorial since September 2019, studying Parkinson's disease in multiple different scopes through the lab and through now this company, working alongside Parkinson's patients. And that was a lot of a transition from COVID and Snowmageddon and everything else that happened during that time. So I'm now doing my PhD in pharmacy, but I didn't actually complete my master's. And I still have not clued up my PhD. So I am a permanent student, I would like to say, as a full-time career path. But I like to island hop also. So from PEI to Nova Scotia to Newfoundland, I haven't really left the East Coast.
Okay, well, that sounds pretty good. That's exciting. And I think when we talked before, because we had a little chance, you said that you got interested in studying neurosciences and things like that because of your concussion. What happened? How did you, what actually did, I don't want to say you got knocked in the head, but what happened in that? How did that kind of make you realize that this was something that you actually really wanted to focus on?
Everybody's favorite question, right? So you say that and you're like, wow, I had a few, mild hits to the head. I was actually on the cheerleading team at St. FX, which is just, a low-level club sport there. But yeah, the training and everything, it was people from all different backgrounds, some who had cheerleaded before, and some newcomers, a lot of people from the dance background. So I wouldn't say it was the safest activity to be at, but I did love it while I was there. And so it was actually during cheerleading, I was the person that they threw around.
Wow.
But as gravity says, you get tossed up, you must come back down. And sometimes there was just not people there to catch me. So,
oh, man.
Yeah. So a few major concussions from that led me to have a lot of alone time in the dark, and therefore my grades ended up going down quite a bit because I was really bad at testing, and I was already a really anxious person, so it wasn't honestly great testing before that, but that really made a noticeable difference. And then during that same time actually, I was working in something called service learning, so you volunteer within the community in some sense. And my partner actually was a Parkinson's patient. So I worked with the physiotherapy clinic in Antigonish. And I was paired up with a Parkinson's patient who was kind of in a very late stage, like in terms of how we would talk, like a 3 or a 4 for sure. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of difficulty. And basically my goal was just to walk with him, keep him active, and have conversation to engage him. So it was quite heartbreaking to see how far advanced he was and that there really wasn't much treatment that they could do for him. So I was like, this is a wild case of study that I'd not really heard of before. And
Mm-hmm.
Parkinson's wasn't something that had happened in my family necessarily. So I wanted to know a little bit more about it. And then it led to a passion of figuring out neurodiseases. And it just so happened that my supervisor here at Memorial actually studied Parkinson's specifically,
Mm-hmm.
as well as concussions. So he was very in tune with what I was going through and what I had already been working on with this patient. And
Mm-hmm.
we were like, how can we blend my experience to work alongside him? So I studied a lot of lab work with mouse models and neurodegenerative diseases. And that's kind of how my research transitioned.
Oh, wow. Interesting. And when you decided to go to Memorial and move from St. FX, you got your concussions, you were being thrown in the air, you decided that's probably not a wise choice. It's not helping me here. It's having an impact kind of on my ability to do things. And then you started to think about doing some other research. And you met this professor that was at Memorial. Was that a big decision for you to kind of decide to continue on with the research path? Like, a lot of people are interested in things, but they don't necessarily decide to take that kind of next step. Like, was there something that made you want to do that next step?
Yeah, I think it was kind of a realm of a bunch of different things. I didn't really want to leave Atlantic Canada quite yet. I really enjoyed the culture that we have here. Ontario would be my next option, but it's quite a big jump, especially coming from Antigonish. If you've been there, it's a small community, and I really loved that community style there. So choosing Newfoundland was on the radar just because Atlantic Canada was, but I didn't ever picture myself necessarily moving here for a while. But I had done a lot of research into programs that could be applicable in the neuroscience field. And a lot of it is honestly just research. There is not a whole lot of career fields that revolve around it without doing research. And that's either drug discovery or rehabilitation services. And so then I found the pharmacy program, which looked a bit different because when I tell people I'm taking a PhD pharmacy, they instantly assume I'm going to be a pharmacist, which is not the case. It's just that I'm, researching at a doctoral level in a pharmacy field. And then I thought, oh, wow, pharmaceutical sales would be kind of cool. I don't really know much about it, but at this point, I'm kind of open to anything. So the transition was really just, I knew if I took a year off, I would not go back to school. And I knew that a biology degree does not give me a very high paying job to survive in the economy we're in. So I was like, how can I go back to school and still enjoy what I'm doing? So I focused on something that was actually passionate for me so that I would not dread going to school every day.
Our theme kind of this month is women in innovation and entrepreneurship. Did you know a lot of other women that were going into this area or this field, or what was no? Oh, okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
It was a lot of people who had specific programs that they wanted to go into. And I had a lot of friends in business who were going into like accounting and finance, but I did not have many friends that were in the research side of things. And if they took a science degree, they're like, yeah, I don't really know what I'm doing with my life now. Like I'm not 100% sure where this leads to. And I think that is where there is a massive gap in that undergrad level. They lead you to the end of it, and then it's like, okay, now what are you gonna do? And it's like, I don't know what I can do. And so I know how many Google searches I did that were like, what job can I get with a Bachelor of Science? And it leads you to a lot of dead ends, or seeing, oh wow, I wish I had taken that in my undergrad because then I would have been prepared to do this post grad later on. And me not knowing that, a lot of that, I wanted to be an occupational therapist for a while or a dentist. And I was like set on that for years. That was exactly what I was going to do. And then I get to the end and it's like, your average was not even close to being high enough. I'm like, wow, that's devastating. So just things that if I had known maybe a little bit in advance, I maybe could have prepared for and taking the right courses, or even just, mentally preparing that I needed to have over a 95 to get accepted into some of these programs.
Interesting. Well, I hear this a lot actually from a lot of young people in all kinds of fields, but sciences in particular. It seems to be there's a little bit of gap, of knowing like what comes next, or what could you be, or where does this lead? So it's really interesting that you were able to still kind of figure out how to get to this next level with pursuing your PhD and doctorate, and making that big leap and saying, I'm going to go to the Rock, I'm going to go to Newfoundland, I'm going to go and pursue this, even if there were not a lot of other women who were doing that at the same time. So it is a big leap leap to kind of take that on. And when you were deciding to head down this path towards doing an advanced degree and you weren't seeing very many women that were there things that were like holding you back from pursuing this kind of path? Or you just thought, no, it's no problem. I got it. And I'll just move ahead here.
I've always been a very independent person. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought, oh, I don't know. I'm just like, if I want to do something, I'm always the person who goes for it. I think that's how I ended up here and what I'm doing. But my lab partner, like she's fantastic. She actually just graduated, but I worked alongside her as soon as I moved here. And it was fascinating how smart she's just the most brilliant person.
Mm-hmm.
And she taught me so much that I didn't know. And I've just learned that you can adapt to the situation. Like I come in and I have no idea what half the chemicals are. I don't know how she knows. And she's just like, I just learned it myself. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that, having the drive that you can, if nobody else is going to show you how to do it, you can probably learn it yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that just takes a lot of passion into what you're doing. So like I say, if you follow what you actually are interested in,
Mm-hmm.
it makes such a difference in the field that you take, for sure.
Yeah. I think having a very curious nature goes a very long way. This is a complete aside, but a while ago, it was winter and I couldn't figure out how to use a snowblower. I'd never really used a snowblower, and everybody was away. I was by myself and there was like a massive blizzard. And I was like, there's got to be a way. And there is. It's called YouTube. You just look on YouTube. And if you don't know how to do something, there's somebody on
YouTube
there.
will tell you. Yeah.
YouTube will tell you. YouTube will tell you. So, okay. So I'm curious about this. You made this sort of leap from PEI and you were at St. FX and Antigonish. Antigonish is a beautiful, beautiful town. Great place to go to school. You realize, you want to get to Newfoundland. So you make your way there. And you're starting to do more research in the field of Parkinson's. Like, how did you decide to think about actually creating a company that was going to focus on, well, anything related to innovative field? How did that occur to you? Just how did that come about?
Like 2 years deep, and I still look back and wonder how it all happened. But my co-founder Gord, who has Parkinson's himself, he is fantastic, and we work so hard every single day to make the dream a reality. But when I met him, I was just giving a talk on blueberries and the impact they can have on neuroprotection. So eat your blueberries. But we were studying this in mice models, and we wasted 9 months for ethics approval to find out we didn't need ethics approval for what we were doing. Like it was honestly the longest 9 months and biggest waste of time I've ever had. And I, at that point, had felt so discouraged about doing research. I was like, there's got to be something different, because I cannot do 9 more months of research approval for one project that I'm supposed to be done a degree in 2 years for. So we had a lot of coffee dates over COVID when I couldn't be in the lab. And we really just brainstormed like, okay, where are the gaps in his personal experience, and which was long wait time, shortage of neurologists. And even when you do get diagnosed, then you're barely being seen every year. And that's no shortfall to a neurologist. They just simply have a ridiculously high workload for how many there are versus how many neuro patients there are. And so they're seeing people, if they're lucky, twice a year. One of those is probably virtual, the other one maybe in person. And so we wanted to be able to bridge the gap between appointments, because who knows if something happens in those 6 months and you can't get a hold of your doctor. We've all been there on those long wait times. And so we wanted to say, where can we step in and fill the gap in the research that I was doing? And honestly, it was all a whirlwind. Like it was such a blur. We said, okay, there's systems out there that can do X, Y, Z. So how can we do, A, B, all the way to Z? And we wanted to actually be able to cover every single symptom and factor of this disease, because there is so many. If you've ever looked up symptoms of Parkinson's, it is everything under the sun. And it can affect your daily life in every single aspect without you even realizing it. So we kind of took all the research and my research skills that we had and compiled it all into this measure, used an international scale, and said, okay, let's build a system. So we contracted out a company here locally to build our vision with some funding from the government. And the vision turned out to be really successful. And then everybody started to believe in the vision. So they kept building it and making it better and including more things. And then all of a sudden we're looking back and we're like, whoa, what did we just build? That's cool. I like that. So then in March, we decided, let's pitch this in a student competition here and see what people think of it. We ended up winning the competition, and everybody was like, you've been hiding this. Why? And I said, I honestly don't know. I don't even know if it was that I meant to, but I know I spoke of this and that, it's almost like hiding my baby until it's perfect. And I didn't want to come out about anything until I knew it was at a level of, okay, this is something people are going to actually like when they see it and they're going to find value in it. And so at that point, we had been out there. We're like, well, we'll just keep trying and see if everybody else seems to like this in different fields. And so we kept pitching, and we won competition after competition. And we realized, okay, we have a pretty cool idea on our hands. So we should probably, actually focus on this fully. And that's kind of whenever we took a deep dive and I actually started spending, full-time hours on this, which is all part of my research because this was my project. And so that's how I transitioned from the research to entrepreneurship. It was all a blur. And I still look back and I don't really know where the line happened, but it was somewhere in the last 2 years.
Well, first of all, it's so interesting to hear you say that. It's almost not accidental, but it's like you were following a passion and it kept going, and then you kind of fell into it to kind of make things happen. So I find that really interesting. I had mentioned to you before, my father had Parkinson's disease as well. So I'm very familiar with kind of the symptoms and the tremors and the inability to kind of control your motor function and how that can really have an impact on, your ability to have a good quality of life. So I'm really appreciative of everything you're doing. And, the other thing you were saying about was, you had this baby, which was your product, Prims, and you were trying to, keep it close to the vest and not let anyone, see it until you felt like it was really, really ready. Do you wish that you had brought it out sooner or anything like that? Or what have you learned about that sort of experience of like the trying to make it just perfect?
Right. It's like such a yes and no kind of answer, because on some aspects, I think, yeah, if we had brought it out earlier and showed everybody, then, we might have been able to get a little bit more support in different ways that we didn't avail of at the time. However, the NRCI rep in the province believed in it from day one, and that was really all we kind of needed to get going, is we needed that initial funding to develop it. And now we're at a point where we can, bring it forward, and people are excited and happy to help in any way, shape, or form, whether that's advisory or mentorship or even investment. And I think that if we had have came out earlier, people would have been a lot more heavy on the like, but why and hows. And at that point, it's really just, it's an innovation, and you don't know the whys and hows yet because it's all still something you're trying to work out. And there is 100% been kinks. We have brought people into the office to try it, and we wanted simple feedback, blunt and honest feedback. You tell us, Parkinson's patients, please tell us what is good and what is bad about it. And they were honest, and it was, some people might take that to heart, like, oh, how dare they, hate on our child that we've just spent so much time developing. But honestly, game changer, because we took the feedback and we've totally just changed the software and how it works and what it does and kind of our model and where we're going with it. And I think that without that harsh feedback, we would not have changed. And that's just it. We wanted to do this for the patients. And so they are the end user. And at the end of the day, it matters to them. It matters to us what it looks like.
And you mentioned you have your co-founder, Gord, who's your COO. And no, you're the CEO and co-founder as well with this company. And was there some, I think I remember you saying there was a little bit of back and forth around, who would kind of lead this, because you guys, Gord, obviously he has the life experience and he is a Parkinson's patient. You have the research and the knowledge around that. How did you guys decide, how would you put your company together?
Oh, such a good question. At the time, I was so hesitant. I was like, I don't know if I want to do it. I'm in school. I really just want to get this degree done. It has been a hard few years. And I was like, I really just need to focus on school. and he comes to me and he sits down and he's like, we really got to figure out the structure. Like, is this going to be something? How are we going to line everything up? Are you going to be in charge? Am I going to be in charge? Together, we're co-founders, so it doesn't really matter. But we do need to figure out who is the person at the head of everything. And then he like looks at me and he's like, and you make a much better face for a company. So I really just wish you would take this on. And I just remember laughing and I was like, I don't know. And then I ended up doing a few conversations similar to such where I was just chatting with people and they were like, but Bronwyn, you're easy to talk to and you're easy to approach and you like talking. That helps too, which I do. And so, being the face wasn't that difficult. But then I started to do these pitch competitions. And I think that's really where it kind of set us apart was he's like, you can get up there and you can present about this in 3 minutes. You can convince people that what we're doing is important, which it is. And he was like, and I will happily let you take the reins on that any day, because he's like, not only do I not want to be up there because I'm not a good public speaker in that sense, but second of all, I have Parkinson's and it's going to take me at least 10 minutes to get your 3-minute pitch out. So he was like, so let's just stick with what we know best. And he is so good at funding applications and like the back things that you would have behind the scenes. I'm terrible at that. And my writing skills, not as good as my public speaking skills. So it was kind of like it fell into place for the better. And the way we operate now is fantastic. So yeah, I wouldn't change it for the world. People always say, how did you go from school to this? And like I say, it is a blur, but it is a good blur nonetheless.
It was interesting. I liked hearing that real conversation that you guys had and like recognizing the different strengths that you each brought to the table to bring this forward. So it's so important to know yourself and know your co-founder and like kind of be real with like who's doing what. How did you, with doing the pitches, like, did that give you a sense of confidence or like, how did that experience of pitching, like, and getting up in front of people and, it's one thing to be in the lab and, running with your mice models and, things like that. Like, what is it like for you when you're pitching? What happens for you?
I love it. I love the anxiety rush that comes before. Like, I was like 12. No, I was probably like 14, and I got up in front of my entire church congregation at the time and had a big public speech. And I thought it was like the craziest thing to be in front of so many people. And now I do these pitches and I'm like, oh, that's nothing. But I think that practice makes perfect. Like, 100% the first time that I got up and I pitched prims, I was like, I don't know if I, believe in what I'm saying right now. And then I started I'm like, Bronwyn, you spent 2 years working on this. You believe in every aspect of what you're doing, and you just need to have other people believe that, you believe as much as you do. And that was just it. It was like the confidence of, as soon as I did the first one, I'm like, yeah, we got this. Like, I know what I'm talking about. And it's so helpful that people say that transition from research to entrepreneurship, and I say it's a blurred line, like so helpful in what I'm doing because I'm in a science sector. Like, regardless, digital health, it is a science background. And I remember I was in seminar a couple months ago at school, and the associate dean just laughs and starts applauding after this first competition win, because it was a school competition. And he just starts applauding. I'm like, is that about my win? Like, confused. And he's like, never have I ever seen a science person win the business competition for the year. So he was like, so props to you. And I was like, yeah, props to me. And I was just so happy about that, because I was so happy that somebody in a science background could win something by using their innovation and their research to kind of go forward with that. So yeah, I don't know. It's been an experience for sure, but I think that using the research has been super helpful in having these pitches, because I'm confident about what I'm saying, because it's something I've been studying for so long now. Yeah,
absolutely. When those judges, because I know I've been one of them, when those judges try to trip you up on something, you're like, nope, I actually know what I'm talking about here. So. Yeah,
exactly. And I get the one question I get almost every time I pitch is, well, how are you going to do your PhD and this at the same time? Ooh. And every single time I have to explain, and you're like, that's something I would ask. I can tell, Alex. But the thing is this is and was and still is my project. So it's really just my research and my writing that I have to do is on every single thing I do day to day with the business. Like, yeah, I really hate writing, and that's going to be the worst part of it all, because I already know everything that I've been doing, and I know the whole aspect of putting the project together. I was there from day one until now, and it's really just like, how is this economically viable in the healthcare system, and on the usability study we did, things like that. So it all flows together. It's just trying to get people to understand that connection, that when I say I'm in pharmacy, people automatically assume, oh, you must be doing like 6 courses and, you must be stressed. But it's I'm actually just working on the business alongside the research at the same time. So it works out really nicely. And there is possibilities to take programs that allow you to do this. So if you're taking a research-based program, there's no reason that your research can't turn into some type of business. You just have to have the confidence in what you're doing.
Yeah. I think that's a really, really great point. And we're trying to see more and more of that. We have so many smart people here in Atlantic Canada doing all kinds of research, a lot of in the medtech space and life sciences and things like that. And getting folks comfortable with that idea that you can take your research out of the lab, and that'll be our next thing we'll talk about. But, getting it out there so that you can turn it into a business or a company or, take it further. So it's really, really exciting to hear you talk about that. If you had some advice for would-be woman entrepreneurs out there, what would you recommend? What would you say to them? Or your younger self?
Like Nike here and be like, just do it.
But
it's so true. Like literally just do it. Because that was totally me. And I did not have the confidence in the beginning. I was like, I am not an entrepreneur. This is not my thing, Gord. Like, I'm sorry, but you're on your own. I'll help you on the research side if you need something. And he was so devastated for a long time until I convinced myself that I was very much capable. I have a very wild background of jobs that I've done since I was 14, and just in every customer service aspect, and I've done financial bookkeeping, and I've served, so I speak to people all the time. I still do that. It's like my hobby, I think, now instead of my job. And I think that if you just believe in what you're doing and you're able to convince other people that what you're doing is going to make a difference, it's going to sell, whatever the business idea is and the business model is, as long as you believe it and you know that it's true, then there's no reason that everybody else wouldn't believe it as well. So have the confidence and know that there's always more resources than you think there are. So a network in Atlantic Canada specifically is fantastic to have, because you have a neighbor or somebody on LinkedIn messaging you being like, hey, have you been in contact with this person? And honestly, half my Zoom calls are just recommendations and soft intros from other people that are like, this person can help further what you're doing. Like, you need to talk to this person. So cold calls, yeah, you might not have great luck, but you don't need them here because there's always soft intros to be made. So if you're seriously considering starting a business, there is no reason that you can't start a business. You just have to talk to the right people, and they're quite easy to find.
Yeah. That's really great advice. Let's leave it with the just do it, the Nike version. Just do it. Okay. Well, I have one little quick final question I'd love to get your take on. It's something we ask a lot of our guests here on the Onside podcast because, we're focused on inclusive, innovation-driven entrepreneurship and trying to create that kind of community here. But one thing we're always interested in is people's opinions around entrepreneurship. Becoming an entrepreneur, do you think it's nature or nurture?
I'm always this person who has to say both because I just can never feel like I can pick one side, but it's so true. I feel like myself personally, there is a bit of nature to it. I already like to public speak. I already have a little bit of background in finance. I already have the science background. So there is some things that naturally have come to me and naturally will continue to come to me, but there is a lot of nurture to that. And there is so many calls I've made in a panic, like, I don't know what I'm doing, help me. And so I think that, it's honestly 50-50. It's both nature and nurture. There is some skills that you will have and everybody will have in different ways, whether that's, you're doing something that you need artistic abilities for, which I do not have. There is people who have skill sets that will always help them naturally. So part of that is the nature of it, but the community that we have can always help nurture everything that you're missing. So there is a wide range of skill sets that it takes to be an entrepreneur that I'm learning every single day. But there is so many people who can help nurture that, and especially within the ecosystem we have in Atlantic Canada. I think it's so important that you reach out to those people.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's awesome. I really appreciate you taking your time today to talk to us and share your insights and your passion and everything that you're doing. If folks want to learn more about your company or learn about you, what's the best way they can do that?
Yeah, you can check out our website, which is just PragmaClin.com. Nice and simple. So PragmaClin.com. And then we also have a LinkedIn and a Facebook page, the exact same. And you can also just connect with me on LinkedIn. So Bronwyn Bridges on LinkedIn.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I'm sure we'll have some of our on-site listeners reaching out to you. And for all of our guests that tuned in today, I want to say thank you for listening to the On-Site podcast. You can learn more about our Inclusive Innovation Monitor on our website, which is onsitenow.ca, and hear more of our great stories coming up on the On-Site podcast. And as we come to a close, I'd like to also thank Community, Culture, and Heritage. We're so grateful for your support in helping us make this podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
This has been a Podstarter production.